This is the Crimson Corner Podcast with Bill Riley, your source for the best insight on everything happening in and around Utah athletics.
Walks it into the end zone for a Utah touchdown.
Now, here's the host of the Crimson Corner, the voice of the Utes, Bill Riley.
Three receivers flex to the right, one to the left-hand side. Dampier's going to pass in the flat. He's got Parker. A lot of room to run. 40, 30, 20. They're not going to get him into the end zone. He goes for a touchdown. Right on second down and 9 for the Cal Poly 45. Diefenbach fires wide to the outside. It's picked. It's going to go to the house. Jackson Benny. The streak is alive. 22 straight years with a pick six for Utah.
All right, Utah fans, welcome into another edition of the Crimson Corner Podcast. I am the voice of the Utes, Bill Riley. Great to have you back with us for another week. We've got a good show for you ahead today. Going to look back on the Utah football win over Cal Poly, the Ring of Honor ceremony, all of that good stuff on the episode today. Our first trip to Laramie, Wyoming in 17 years for Utah football. So we'll talk a little bit about that today. Go around the Big 12 after 3 weeks of games. We'll have a guest coming up on the pod today, Keith Kelley, who's the play-by-play voice of the Wyoming Cowboys. I'll be honest, since we don't see Wyoming a lot, and Wyoming's not on TV a lot, I don't know a lot about the Pokes as I'm digging into them this week. So he can give us a little scouting report on what we're going to see coming up on Saturday evening when we go back to Laramie. Then some other stuff going on as well. Volleyball goes to Nebraska this week. They face the number one team in the country, the Nebraska Cornhuskers, and we've got a game time for Texas Tech. We'll talk about that as well coming up on the Crimson Quarter Podcast presented by doTERRA. So let's dig into it. Big win over Cal Poly at home on Saturday, 63-9. It wasn't certainly the opponent and the level that we saw against UCLA, but it's hard to argue when you score and score as well as Utah did and hold an opponent to 3 field goals over 60 minutes of football. Best part of it was, though, Utah got out of the game healthy. They sat a couple of starters for the most part, didn't really need them. That was just out of precaution, but they got out of that game healthy and in good shape as they head to Laramie this week. And another great balance on offense, 518 total yards, 273 on the ground, 245 through the air. They're still perfect in the red zone this year, too. They were 9 for 9 on Saturday. They're 11 for 11 on the year. Dampier continues to be good. We even got some glimpses of Bird Ficklin on the weekend. He showed some glimpses, and what Kyle Whittingham said now is it appears that Bird's kind of moved into that number 2 quarterback spot for the University of Utah. On the defensive side of things, you give up 9 points, hard to argue with. You're +2 in turnovers. You get 3 sacks. You get a pick 6. I don't know how you don't like everything you saw on Saturday if you're a Utah fan. A few interesting notes. Utah has scored 106 points in their first 2 games of the year. The last time they went 100-plus in back-to-back games, anyone? Give my stats guy Dave Spatafor some credit here. The last time Utah went 100-plus in back-to-back games, back in 2022, they put 63 up on Colorado, and then the following week in the Big 12 or the Pac-12 championship game, they put 47 up on the USC Trojans. So that was the last time Utah went back-to-back 100 points in 2 games. Now, here's one other interesting stat. Utah's +87 in points after the first 2 games. The last time they were +87 or better in back-to-back games, also 2022. They scored 73, I believe it was, against Southern Utah, and then put up 35 against San Diego State and held both those teams to very little in scoring. They were +94 in those 2 games. When you're +94 or you're +87, you'll win a lot of football games. 54 first downs in 2 games. This will be a little depressing, but make you happy at the same time. 54 first downs in 2 games. That's more than they had in the last 4 games of last year combined. I know. We won't look backward very much, but we will say the offense is better this year, undoubtedly. And no turnovers for Utah in the first 2 games. You have to go all the way back to 2021 to the last time Utah didn't have a turnover in back-to-back games. So Things are trending the right way. Certainly competition in the coming weeks will be better. I would say this week, Wyoming falls somewhere between UCLA and Cal Poly, but it's on the road. And I don't need to tell you, longtime Utah, you youngins out there that are listening to the podcast, some of you may not have even been alive the last time Utah played at Laramie or played the Wyoming Cowboys. Wyoming is not an easy place to play. It's just not. Luckily, we're going there in mid-September instead of like mid-November. Let's just put it that way. All right, my 3 takeaways from the Cal Poly game. Utah's front 4, and especially the edge rushers, are very good, and they're going to get better. Logan Fano suited up, but he didn't play on Saturday. It was just a chance to rest him up a little bit with some nagging things that I guess he's dealing with. John Henry Daly, Cash Dillon, Paul Fitzgerald, all with excellent games. In fact, John Henry Daly with another sack. He's got 3 now in 2 games. He was the highest graded pass rush end for the weekend in all of college football. All of college football, Division I college football. John Henry Daly, highest graded according to Pro Football Focus. Those guys are good. Logan Fano wasn't even in the mix. You've got Lance Holtzclaw that's in there as well, too. This is a really, really good group. Second takeaway from the weekend. Offense remains hard to predict and defend. 9 different Utes carried the football on Saturday. 9 different guys. 9 different pass catchers on Saturday as well against Cal Poly. 9 times, Mrs. Bueller. 9 times. When you're spreading the ball out that way to runners and pass catchers, it's very hard to defend. I'm telling you, and I know Cal Poly is a 1AA opponent. Tell me this is not a fun offense to watch, whether it was in week 1 against UCLA or even Saturday. Devin Dampier has options. Oh, yeah, he's got himself as well. He can run the football. He chose to run it a little bit, but he was mostly distributing the football. And I'm just saying, talking to some of those guys after the game, including the Kerry Rogers, who played in this offense at New Mexico a year ago, he kind of laughed. I said, how much have we seen so far? He's like, well, you haven't seen very much of the offense so far. And what we've seen has been really, really fun. So that's my second point. Hard to defend, hard to predict, but really fun to watch. And my third takeaway, and it was good to see this because we haven't seen it in the last couple of years. The return game actually returned on Saturday. Rayshawn Glover had a 51-yard punt return. We'll need more of that as the season goes along. You need your special teams, whether it's a great kick or a great punt or a blocked punt or a fake punt or whatever it might happen to be, or a punt return. When Utah has had some of their best teams, think of Britton Covey dropping back. You don't always have to have the 51-yard return, but if you can get the 15 and 20 yards, you're able to flip that field so much better. And Rayshawn Glover had some time to return a punt, took it 51 yards. That was excellent, excellent work by him. So those are my 3 takeaways from the game. Again, not super in-depth stuff. You're playing Cal Poly. It's an opponent you should beat. Utah did exactly what it should do. Held them below double digits and scored 63 points. I think they punted twice. I think Orion Phillips punted twice on Saturday. My game ball. I'm going to give you a game ball every week from a Utah football game. Yeah, you could say there's a lot of places you could go with a game ball. Jackson Benny extended the streak of pick sixes for Utah to 22 years. Fantastic. And he had 3 pass breakups. Kerry Rogers had a couple of touchdowns. Dallin Bentley got a touchdown. There were a lot of guys that got involved. But I'm going to go with a guy that made his first career start on Saturday, and he started at a tough position. He's been in the program for 5 years now, and he finally got a chance to start. Alex Harrison. He got to start in place of Jaron Kump on Saturday. Again, another one of those, well, give this guy some rest, a chance to heal up just a little bit. Alex got the start at center. He's a local kid. He's a Utah kid. He's bided his time here, and I thought he did an excellent job, as did the offensive line on Saturday. So it's easy to recognize the guys whose names we hear all the time, but I wanted to recognize a guy that doesn't get to play a lot, but really I thought contributed really, really well. And so I'm going to give Alex Harrison my game ball. Now, we are off to Laramie for the first time since 2008 on Saturday. Yep. Utah playing Wyoming in Laramie. The last time they played there, they won. That was the 2008 season. That was the great Sugar Bowl team that went undefeated and did everything the right way. They beat them 40-7 that day. The last time Utah actually played Wyoming was the 2010 season, their last year as, members of the Mountain West, and they beat Wyoming and Salt Lake City 30-6. Now, there have been some wild games. Those of you that are old enough to remember lots and lots of games down through the years, weird things happen when you go to Laramie or just when Utah and Wyoming play. Two memories for me. When I first started with the Utah broadcast team all the way back in 2004, it was Billy Marcroft's last year. That was the year of the Fiesta Bowl, BCS busting Utah football team. They went up there and played on I think it was mid-November. I think it was November 13th of 2004. That was the night of the infamous Harry Potter game. For those of you that are old enough to remember, there was a power outage before the game. That power outage lasted 1 hour and 39 minutes. The game was supposed to kick off at 5 o'clock. It did not. There was no power to the field. There was no power to the press box. There was nothing. You could not broadcast. There were no lights. There was nothing. Teams went back in the locker room. We're sitting up in the booth. We can't do a radio broadcast because there's no power. So we were told power was going to come on right around 6 o'clock. It did not. The game was being aired by ABC. It was a regional broadcast. In fact, our good friend Jamal Anderson, the Dirty Bird himself, had just started in broadcasting. I think he had just retired from the NFL. I believe Jamal was on the broadcast that day. I might be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure I remember seeing Jamal Anderson in the booth. So ABC4 had a decision to make. They had the game, our friends at Channel 4. At 6 o'clock, they had to make the decision. ABC put down the edict. You can either stay with the football game, but you'll have to fill yourself back at the studio, or you go to Harry Potter. They were showing the original Harry Potter movie on ABC that night. Here was the catch, though. If they went to Harry Potter, they were not allowed to switch back to football when and if power came on. If they went to Harry Potter, they had to stay with Harry Potter. Well, there was no idea or time of when that game was going to come back on, and I don't think they had the resources that night to be able to fill time on television. Could be a half hour, could be 2 hours. So ABC4, in their infinite wisdom, instead of staying with Utah, which again, everybody's got to make a decision, they decided to go to Harry Potter. 39 minutes later, the football game came back. We on the radio were fine. That was the only place you could get it, was on the radio in Salt Lake City. Well, the switchboard at ABC4 began to blow up. As you would expect, angry and irate Ute fans not wanting to watch Harry Potter, but wanting to watch their beloved Utes, Alex Smith, Urban Meyer, and crew. They weren't able to see him, but they were able to listen. The great Bill Marcroft was doing one of his final games as voice of the Utes that night, and his phone was blowing up. People telling him, well, they've gone to show Harry Potter and not the Utah football game. So Bill, being Bill and his infinite wisdom, decided, well, let me give Utah fans a number they can call to perhaps get this resolved or get some answers. So on the air, as I'm sitting next to him as his spotter that night and doing pre- and post-game, Bill Marcroft proceeded to give Wes Ruff's cell phone number out over the radio. Needless to say, Wes did not know this, and his phone began to melt down. It exploded. So many people were calling, irate and angry. And Bill, and I'm waving my arm saying, Bill, what are you doing? He's, Bill Riley, what are you? I'm just giving them Wes Ruff's. But he didn't give him his office desk number. He gave him his cell phone number. That's the infamous Harry Potter game. That was Utah, Wyoming. And then, of course, the other one people remember and remember well was the infamous Flips the Bird game. Back in 2007, Joe Glenn, who was then the head coach of the Wyoming Cowboys, made some comments about Utah and some different things during the week. And those comments may or may not have gotten back to the head coach of the University of Utah, Kyle Whittingham. And Kyle and the Utes took those comments to heart that day and were up 43-0 on the Wyoming Cowboys. And then Utah decided to practice their onside kick. Well, Joe Glenn did not like that very much and told Kyle Whittingham he was number one, not with one hand, but with two hands from the opposite sideline. That game known as the Flip the Bird game. Joe Glenn apologized later for the gesture, and Kyle Whittingham said, well, if I had to do it all over again, I probably wouldn't practice my onside kick. Two great memories of Utah football and the Wyoming Cowboys. This year's edition of Wyoming, I don't know a ton about them right now. I'm learning as I go this week. They beat Akron. They beat Northern Iowa, a 1AA program. Caden Anderson, sophomore, returning, played a little bit last season, 3 touchdowns and a pick, 427 yards. Chris Durr is probably their best weapon on offense. He's a wide receiver. Had 12 catches for 244 yards, a couple of touchdowns last year. He's a Chicago native. And their defense appears to be pretty good. They've given up just 7 points in 2 games. Shut out a MAC school, that was Akron 10-0, and then beat Northern Iowa 31-7. So we'll see what we have as we get to Laramie coming up on Saturday. By the way, kind of football-ish weather. It's going to be 65 degrees and cloudy in Laramie, and I guarantee the wind will be blowing because the wind is always blowing in Laramie, Wyoming. So that's a little rundown on it. We'll get a little bit more. Our special guest on the podcast today is the play-by-play voice of the Wyoming Cowboys. We're going to kind of talk to him coming up and get a little scouting report, see what lies ahead here for the Utes coming up this weekend. Keith Kelley joins us next year on the Crimson Corner. Stay with us.
Here's another insider interview on the Crimson Corner podcast.
All right, Crimson Corner continues as we get you ready for the Wyoming game coming up on Saturday, 6 o'clock kickoff. We'll have our pregame coverage from the box in Laramie beginning at 4. Overall coverage on the flagship radio home will begin at 2. So a long day of pregame, kicking it off at 6 o'clock. You can listen to myself and Scott Mitchell and Stevenson Sylvester. Both those guys played up in Laramie back in the day. Scott back in the days of the WAC and Sly. Well, he was on the last team that played in Laramie for the University of Utah, that great 2008 team. I broadcasted up there, but it was a while ago. And we're joined now by the play-by-play voice of the Wyoming Cowboys, Keith Kelley, who's in. What year are you in now?
So this is my 3rd full year. I took over late in November in 2022. I'm in my 3rd full year, I guess you could say 4th overall. I'm just wondering, Bill, you got a 4-hour pregame show. What was it like the last time you were in Laramie? What was the pregame show like? That's my question.
Well, the last time I was in Laramie, the pregame show, we only have to do 2 of the 4 hours. The network's 2, then the local affiliate does the first 2. It wasn't bad. I mean, we carried it okay. It wasn't like the night the power went out in Laramie.
Oh, my gosh.
That was 2004, and that was a crazy night. The famous Harry Potter game back in 2004 where all the lights went out in the stadium, the power went out in the press box, and it was cold. That was November 13th, Keith. I don't know if you were doing pre- and post-game, if you were in Laramie yet, but that was, in these parts, it's known as the Harry Potter game because the local ABC affiliate chose to go to Harry Potter and not stay with the football game, and they weren't allowed to switch back. So the switchboard melted at the ABC affiliate Channel 4 here in town that night.
So we did our local pregame and then sent it to Dave and Kevin. And the guy I was doing our local tailgate show with, we went to a establishment and hung out there for a little while before we were going to come back. And then we kept getting word that the power was out and everything. Ended up, I was on the field, just hanging out on the field. Coldest I've ever been there. It was so cold and so windy. But made it through the game, and that was a great Utah football. That was the initial BCS buster.
That was the Fiesta Bowl team with Alex Smith, Morgan Scally, who's defensive coordinator, was Mountain West Conference Defensive Player of the Year. Urban Meyer was the coach. Kyle Whittingham was the defensive coordinator. Yep. But it was cold. They went into the locker rooms and they've taken naps. They took off their pads. They ordered food in for them. They did all that stuff. And I think I saw it was an hour and 39-minute delay. Now, the power was out longer than that, but the game was supposed to kick off at 6 or 5, I should say, and it ended up kicking off at like 6:49, 6:39 or something. And, yeah, you're right. It was cold. It's always windy in Laramie, but that night it was windy and cold.
Yes, it was. I vividly remember that because I was hanging out on the Utah sideline, and I think the cheerleaders had their own game of football going on, and I'm like, anything to stay warm, I guess, at that point. Hopefully, I think we should be good to go. I think it's supposed to be pretty comfortable this Saturday night.
No, it's supposed to be, I think, 65, cloudy, a little breeze, perfect football
Mhm.
weather for September. The other game that I was mentioning in the first segment of the podcast, it's, of course, in lore. It was in Salt Lake City. It was the famous double bird Joe Glenn game. How's our boy Joe Glenn doing these days?
I haven't talked to Joe Glenn in quite some time, but I vivid. We talked about it with Kevin McKinney. He was on my show. He's on weekly on my show every Monday, and we were talking about that game. And they made T-shirts out of that silhouette of Joe Glenn doing the middle finger. And I know you guys probably know the story, but it was all centered around a guarantee of a win. Here's the guarantee. I don't know if you remember this, Bill. He was speaking to like a handful of students in the basement of the student union about how we're going to beat Utah. He was just getting them fired up. Maybe there was like a dozen, 2 dozen students down there. It had no media coverage, but somehow it got out in the media that he guaranteed this victory. And it got back to Kyle, and then he did the onside kick at 40-0, which I think he turned around and said he probably shouldn't have done that at that point. But
Yeah, he
yeah,
said, well, if I had to do it all over again, I probably wouldn't do that onside kick. But
no.
but here's what I love, and you probably do too, Keith. This is what makes college football great. Hey, I
Mhm.
love the NFL and I love pro sports, but you don't get that stuff there. These are the type of stories that are told and passed down through the years and generations in old rivalry games. When I talk to my partner Scott Mitchell, he talks about old Utah BYU games, and
No,
Sly does the same thing. It's just this is what makes college football so great.
it is. And we got to play BYU last year in Laramie for the first time in forever. And it was just so fun to relive that. I can remember when Joe Glenn, you brought him up, right? His first year in Laramie, they beat BYU and Colorado State the same year, and the goalpost came down both those games. So they had to put goalposts in that were reinforced that would never, ever come down again because it cost them so money. But that was back so much money. That was back in 2003. So I remember I think it was '06 Utah game where Wyoming just really dismantled the Utes. I think they were up 28-31 nothing before Utah came back. And I think that was the last win Wyoming had over Utah, to be honest with you. So I love the old rivalries. It's a lot of fun. And like I said, Kevin, he's going to have a blast reliving Utah memories when we do the game on Saturday.
If I had to ask you, who would Wyoming fans say is their biggest rival? Because
Ooh,
Colorado State's close and they play for what's the trophy they play for?
the bronze boot.
Yeah, the bronze boot. But I know they Wyoming fans detest BYU. They probably don't have a lot of love for Utah. But who would Wyoming fans say is their like down through the years their big rival?
It's Colorado State. I mean, it's hands down CSU. There's just a lot of hatred that goes on there. BYU's close. BYU's a close number two, especially for those out in the western part of the state that are inundated with the BYU culture and everything like that that goes on. But it's CSU for sure.
We're talking to Keith Kelley. He's the play-by-play voice of the Wyoming Cowboys. Hard for me, at least in my research, getting ready for this, to get a feel for where you guys are right now. 2 wins, only giving up 7 points. Akron and Northern Iowa. Utah's got a UCLA, but they also have a
Mhm.
Cal Poly. So you tell me, where do you kind of let's start first with this. What were the expectations coming into this year?
To be better than 3-9. When Jay Savell was hired, he said, Craig Bull. I look at this as like a 4x100 relay. He ran the first 3 laps of it. It's now my turn to do the final 100 meters and bring conference championships to Wyoming. They had everybody returning last year. The excitement around Evan Svoboda, who really had only done the Texas game where they went to the fourth quarter tied at 10 down in Texas when he filled in for Andrew Peasley. But we really underestimated the loss of some of the key seniors that Wyoming had last year. And it just, there was a lack of leadership last year and it just wasn't good. And I think getting bowl eligible is probably the minimum requirement this year to get back to that sort of thing. After the first two games, where are they at? You're right. They played Akron and Northern Iowa. I really felt like Northern Iowa's offense was better than Akron's, but you get road wins, double-digit road wins don't grow on trees at Wyoming. They haven't, and you can go beat an FBS team on the road by double figures. They dominated the game. If they would have picked up a few more third and fourth and shorts, it's probably 24-0, 20-0, something like that, instead of just 10-0. Played much better against Northern Iowa, more efficient on offense. They still got a lot of work to do, but I think they're excited about the prospects. They're deeper than they've been in a long time. They had 11 different guys catch balls against Akron. Different guys ran the ball. They are playing 22, 23 guys on defense, which never happens, and there's really no drop-off. They really like their depth. This is going to be the best team they play all year, though. I mean, this is a different beast. Joe Glenn used to say it, the price of poker goes up when the Utes are coming in. I mean, they just are. They're the best team Wyoming will play this year.
Well, it's the start of a tough stretch, too. You're right. It's Utah, but then it's Colorado the following week, and then it's UNLV, who's one of the best teams in that league. So it's the start of a tough 3-game stretch, isn't it?
It certainly is, and I'd go even 2 games further than that because they'll get San Jose State and Air Force as well, which I mean this is a tough 5-game stretch where I felt like they had to win the first 2, and if they can somehow go 3-2 over the next 5, they put themselves in a really, really good position. I don't know where those wins are going to come from, because you get a couple of those, 3 of those at home. But like I said, one of them's Utah. I mean, I watched them against UCLA, and I don't think UCLA is particularly good or well coached, but they just dismantled the Bruins, man. I was so impressed. And we've seen Devin Dampier, the last couple of years when he was at New Mexico, and know the challenge. He's got bright, shiny new toys to play with at Utah now.
Hey, what do you remember? I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think he ran for 2. He didn't have a big passing day against you guys last year, but he ran for over 200 yards.
He's just so dynamic. And we actually got to see him 2 years ago. He came in relief of, I forget who New Mexico's quarterback was 2 years ago in Laramie. And he came in and nearly brought him back. I mean, New Mexico was dead in the water, and he comes in and it's a game all of a sudden. And we got our first glimpse of him, and Wyoming hadn't prepared for him or anything like that. So he just kind of just took him by surprise. It wasn't by surprise last year. And that game was a shoot. I think it was 35-35 at the half. And then I don't know what New Mexico was doing. They were up 42-35, and they're throwing the ball late in the game. They haven't done any, like you said, throwing the ball, and Wyoming gets a pick 6 and puts the game away at that point. And I don't know what they were doing, but man, he's so dynamic, and he's gotten better as a passer, I think, this year.
Yeah, he certainly has. It's interesting, funny story. I talked to Jason Beck, who was obviously the OC at New Mexico last year. Mm-hmm. He's coming in from Syracuse. I said, how'd you find Dampier? He goes, well, he was a freshman in the program. He said, I was getting ready to hit the transfer portal to get a couple of quarterbacks. And then I put on some tape of the end of the season, and he got into a couple of games at the end of that season 2 years ago. And I'm looking at this kid going, I don't think I need to go to the transfer portal. I think I've got my quarterback right there.
He just brings so many different elements. I think Jay Savell said it Monday in his press conference, like, even if your defense is in the right position, and this is what makes it so frustrating, you're doing everything right, he's got that element to where it doesn't matter. He can go make something happen off script that is so difficult. And when you have the weapons and the skill guys that Utah does, it makes it that much harder to stop.
Keith Kelley with us for a couple more minutes. He's the voice of the Wyoming Cowboys. Utah's going to be in Laramie on Saturday. What do we need to know about this Cowboy team? We're talking about Utah's quarterback. Tell me about Caden Anderson.
Well, he took a vicious hit late in the third quarter of that the Northern Iowa game. They sent a corner blitz, running back didn't pick it up, and Anderson just got waylaid right in the upper body. Initially I thought he got hit in the shoulder, but it was that, midsection rib cage area, and he left the game and actually went to the hospital for precaution. They just did some internal checkups. Talked to Jay Savell yesterday. First question was, how's Caden? He said he's fine. He anticipates him playing against Utah. So that's good news for Wyoming. He brings he's such an elite passer of the football. He's really really good, and he's just going to get better. But I mentioned the depth that they have at their skill spots. That is such a key. And then the interior of the offensive line is a strength from left guard Wes King, center Jack Walsh, right guard Caden Barnett. Walsh and Barnett are both preseason All Mountain West guys. Chris Durr Jr. is elite in terms of his ability to make plays. Jalen Sargent's a guy who can go up and get the ball. John Mike Gillenborg's an NFL tight end. He's the best tight end in the Mountain West, in my opinion. And they're developing some running backs. Remember the name? They call him Tote. Samuel Harris, Tote Harris. He's a freshman. He'll see some action, but Sam Scott's that big bruising back. Defensively, they're deep again. They play a lot of guys on defense, and they're a lot better than I thought. The secondary was the question mark. And Tyrese Foss, he can cover really, really well. The safeties have been a lot better than I thought. But these linebackers, I'm talking Evan Eller, talking Ethan Stulsatz, Braden Johnson off the top of my head. Those three guys have played really, really well. Gary Rutherford's a good athlete, and then they're deep along the defensive line. Isaiah Bogar came back from injury and had a big game for them last week. So, they're just better all the way around. I don't know if that means it'll be in a competitive game in Laramie, but they're just better and deeper all the way around.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. They've only given up 7 points in 2 games. Is that because they've gotten markedly better, or is that because the competition wasn't great, or maybe a little bit of both?
Yes, a little bit of both. But I can go back to last year, and I know the team is different, but the concept is the same. You go back to the last 2.5 games last year, they held CSU to 7 points in the second half. They held Boise to just 17 points the entire game and 10 until the fourth quarter when Genty had a big run. And then they shut Washington State out in the second half, and that's John Mateer and Arbuckle. They shut them out in the second half in Pullman. So this defense has only allowed 1 touchdown in the last 2.5 games. So the concepts are there. Aaron Bowles really getting a hang of this. Again, Utah's going to be a different beast, the best team they've seen in a long, long time. So the offense, Utah's going to score some points. They'll score more than 7, I think. If they don't, Wyoming's got a really, really good shot. But Utah's just so explosive. I mean, it's just going to be really, really tough. I think Jay Savell has him. He had him ranked in his coach's poll at 10. That's where he put Utah.
Well, it was interesting. Coach's poll, I always kind of, who knows who fills those ballots out. But after week 1, I saw the stat, and Utah, they came in at 25 after they beat UCLA, but it turned out of the 66 ballots cast, they weren't even on 28 of them.
It's wild.
Well, that just goes to show you nobody stayed up to watch the old Pac-12 after dark matchup with UCLA, and that's part of the problem with the vote. But again, in this day and age, thankfully, we've now got the poll that matters comes out in October, so
right.
We'll see where it goes from there. Complete this sentence for me, and then we'll wind things down. It's a good day Saturday for the Pokes if what happens?
It's a good day Saturday for the Pokes if they can control the clock and keep Devin Dampier off the field and then neutralize that front 7 of Utah. If they can protect Caden, open up some holes in the ground game, and then neutralize Dampier, they've got a shot. If those things don't happen, I mean, it's going to be really, really hard.
I haven't been to Laramie in a few years. What's changed?
Yep. The stadium is almost unrecognizable, probably. I shouldn't say that. I mean, you still have the 2 sides, but did they have the Wildcatter suite on the east side at the
I don't think so. Are the trees still in the one end zone?
Nope. No, they don't. The trees are gone in the north end zone. So they have a new high altitude training center. It's this state of the art training center that they have where Leonard Fournette at LSU came up and trained there a while back. So that's now in the north end zone. Beautiful facility. South end zone got a big video board. They still have the trees in the south end zone. New press box. West side was completely redone, revamped. East side, no longer exposed steel or anything. It's not closed in, but it looks, you've got some brand new amenities there. So, and the elevators are our sideline guy who did color with me last week, because Kevin McKinney missed his first game ever to go to his son's wedding. my color commentator yet last week, he said it's 38 seconds faster than the old elevators. So, and there's 2 of them now. There's 2 elevators to get to the top. So
Well,
it's a lot nicer.
I'm looking forward to being welcomed to 7,200 feet because it hasn't happened in a few years. Hey, thanks for doing this, Keith. Look forward to seeing you on Saturday.
Absolutely, Bill. Safe travels, and we will definitely see you on Saturday. Thank you so much.
That's the voice of the Wyoming Cowboys, Keith Kelley. More ahead on the Crimson Corner.
The best insight on all things Utah athletics. It's the Crimson Corner Podcast.
Big thank you to Keith Kelley, the voice of the Wyoming Cowboys, for joining us here on the Crimson Corner, giving us a little scouting report on what's coming up on Saturday in Laramie at War Memorial Stadium. Just a reminder for you, pregame coverage on our flagship radio home will be at 2 o'clock, and then a 4 o'clock pregame with myself, Scott Mitchell, and Stevenson Sylvester from Laramie, and then about a 6 o'clock kickoff. We'll have it for you on the radio side of things. I believe CBS Sports Network will be the place you can watch that game. As always, turn down the volume on your television, hit the pause, sync it up. You can stream it as well at ESPN700sports.com and tune in. That's 6 o'clock on Saturday from Laramie. Speaking of kickoff times, we have found out what next week's kickoff time is for the Texas Tech Red Raiders, and guess what? It's going to be the polar opposite of what we got with the UCLA game. We had a Pac-12 after dark rematch in the UCLA game. Well, we've got a big noon kickoff coming on Fox. Big Fox is going to carry the Texas Tech game on the 20th. Kickoff for that game is 10 a.m. Big Fox is carrying it. I'm guessing that's probably Joel Klatt and Gus Johnson. We'll probably find that out as we go here. But it's the big one. Fox has the Big 12 package, and it's a big game. In all likelihood, it's going to be 2 teams ranked in the teens. Utah right now is at number 20. Texas Tech, I believe, is at number 21 this week. And both teams expected, or at least favored on paper, to win this week. It's a really, really good matchup to kick off the Big 12 season. We'll obviously talk more about that coming up next week. And this was one of the games I had circled on the calendar before the season, because I thought Texas Tech was going to be good. I don't know how good they are yet, and frankly, nobody knows how good anybody is yet. We're 2 games into the season for just about everybody. You really don't know what you've got until usually that first week of October after you've played a month of football. But I feel pretty confident in saying Utah is a good football team, and I think Texas Tech is also a good football team right now, too. In fact, I caught up with their head coach, Joey McGuire, at Big 12 Media Day down in Dallas, and he's never coached or played a game in Salt Lake City, and he said, I have got nothing but the utmost respect for Kyle Whittingham. He said, when I close my eyes and I think of what college football is supposed to be, I think of Kyle Whittingham and Utah and physical smash-mouth football. And he said, I've heard the atmosphere at Rice-Eccles Stadium is going to be amazing as well. It's not going to be a night game. We'll have some night games, I'm sure, this year, but I got to be honest with you. As a broadcaster, and I kind of take the same tack Kyle Whittingham does, I love a good early kickoff under the sunshine. You know, Whit would love to kick him off at 6 a.m. when the sun rises over the Wasatch Mountains if possible. TV won't allow that, but this is the earliest kickoff we could have here in Salt Lake City at 10 a.m., and I think it's amazing. So I'm looking forward to that matchup. 2 top 20 teams squaring off. 10 a.m., Big Fox, big noon kickoff coming up on the 20th. So that's going to be a lot of fun. The other big news on campus this week is Utah Volleyball. They won over the weekend, took care of Utah State over the weekend, but they've got a matchup on Friday night that's as big as you can get in the world of collegiate volleyball. They are going to go on the road to Lincoln, Nebraska, and play the number 1 team in collegiate volleyball. That's the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Friday night, that's on national TV as well. FS1's going to have that one. It'll be the 3rd all-time meeting between Utah and Nebraska. They're 1-1 all-time. Utah won in Lincoln, ironically enough, September the 11th, 2021. So it was almost 4 years ago that they won in Lincoln 3-2. They also lost to Nebraska 3-2 in the second round of the NCAAs, also in Lincoln, back in 2014. So a big early test for Beth Lanier's team. They faced a really good Texas A&M team last weekend and got swept, but it was a good test for them. This is as good as it gets in collegiate volleyball. There will be roughly 13 or 14,000 people. Remember, Nebraska played a game at their football stadium a couple of years ago and had 80,000 people show up. They really support anything Nebraska in Nebraska because there's no pro sports in Nebraska. Football, basketball, volleyball, you name it. It's everything in that state. They won't be playing in the football stadium. They will be playing in their basketball/volleyball arena, and they'll have 13 or 14,000 for it. It'll be on FS1 coming up on Friday night at 7, and then they'll turn around and play, I think, Drake on Saturday, same place in Lincoln. So big weekend coming up as well for Utah Volleyball. Huge weekend coming up. They're all huge in football because you only have 12 of them. But we'll be in Laramie, Wyoming on Saturday night. Pre-game coverage begins at 2 and a 6 o'clock kickoff on the radio side of things for our broadcast as the Utes take on the Wyoming Cowboys. Big thank you to Nick Bowlerjack for producing this today. Thank you as well to the play-by-play voice of the Wyoming Cowboys for taking a little time out of his day and visiting with us today. Keith Kelley taking some time. And thanks to you guys for tuning in as well. We're going to have a huge one next week. I'm already plotting and planning next week's Crimson Corner podcast with a huge Texas Tech and Fox rolling into town and all of that stuff for the Big 12 opener. So enjoy it. Thanks for tuning in today. Catch us this weekend with football. Take in that volleyball this weekend as well. And we'll be back here next week on the Crimson Corner podcast. Go Utes.
You've been listening to the Crimson Corner podcast with Bill Riley. Bill is back next week with the latest on Utes. Download previous Crimson Corner episodes on all major podcast platforms.